Welcome back to the Washington Examiner. I'm White House correspondent Christian Daytalk, and I'm seated today with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Mr. Duffy, thank you for making time for us.
Christian, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We're doing video because you are a video professional, obviously a reality television all-star. And I kind of want to start there.
You're kind of buttering me up, aren't you? Get me loosened up for the interview, is that the deal?
Softball and then a really hard one coming right after it. No, but President Trump has sort of an unconventional cabinet, obviously a lot of folks with television or new media experience in there. Do you view this as a pro or a con?
So I think what the president's done is he said, I'm going to bring in a unique group of people to get unique results, right? So, I mean, you bring in Republicans and Democrats with the same background, same philosophies, and you get the same results generation after generation. The president said, listen, I'm going to bring in people who think like me, that want to accomplish the same goals that I want to accomplish. And yeah, some of them have, different backgrounds, but again, you're going to get different results with that. And so I also think it's important to be able to communicate the message, right? We're in a new medium of how do you tell the story of what you're doing. We can look to the traditional media, which we do, but also look to other sources and tell our stories directly to the American people with less of a filter through traditional media, which is a positive.
Speaking of that message, how would you drill it down, what you're trying to do at DOT right now? And how is that different from, say, President Biden's administration or even the first Trump administration?
So, I mean, everything we do here revolves around one thing only. It's safety, right? And I think on January 29th, we saw that when you don't get that right, nothing else matters, right? We lost 67 lives when we had the air collision between the American Airlines and the military helicopter. And so that is the mission. And before I got here, they were focused on a lot of things. Diversity, they were focused on changing names of that they thought had gender biases. And when you focus on those things, you don't focus on safety. And so we've taken the whole department and said, listen, if we get things wrong, people lose their lives, people die. And so we don't care about any of these issues. We don't celebrate any days, we don't celebrate any months. We celebrate safety, that's it. And I think we have a department that has bought into that. They're like, you know what, you're right, because all of us use the roads and the trains and the planes. And so we do want to make sure when America travels, but when we travel, we're all safe when we do it.
I want to stick on this point for a second because I understand it's a new administration. It's sort of a balancing act. One, waiting until you can actually implement the president's agenda while still sort of reminding voters this is what it looked like when the last group was in office. But are you concerned that, positioning yourself as almost an anti-Pete Buttigieg, I've heard you talk about at length, DOT shouldn't be saying roads are racist or anything like that. Is there a danger of obscuring the new work that you guys are doing here if we're just focusing on the last 4 years?
So, but I'm not focused on the last 4 years. I don't look back, I look forward. But when the question comes, I'm going to make sure to talk about what went wrong, if I'm asked. But I look forward to say, what should the department look like? What should it focus on? And again, the experiences that we've had in the first 2 months of being here have formed the way we think about truly what the mission is and what's at risk if we get it wrong. And again, whether it's how we spend money or if it's on air traffic control, all of those things come back to this point that again is looking forward, not back. But if you ask me what went wrong, I'm going to tell you what went wrong. We had 85 near misses in the last 3 years in the DCA airspace. Well, who was looking at that? Why didn't you see that happen? And why didn't you do something before you had this mid-air collision? Were you focused on the wrong things? And we can learn from that to say, okay, well, you might have been looking somewhere else. We're going to look at all of these factors that will drive safety. And so for us on that one issue of the FAA didn't see 85 near misses as a risk, and maybe we should close down or restrict the airspace around DCA, we've said, okay, well, let's use AI to look at all the reports that come in at airports around the country to see the hotspots and see where we have to take action to make sure people are safe. And so, again, we've learned from their mistakes, and we're going to do it way differently.
On that point on the AI, can you tell us a little bit about how many airports are, at risk or perhaps below some of these acceptable safety standards like we saw at DCA? Is this truly a nationwide problem, or was this specific to this one airport? Really?
I don't think every airport's different, and DCA was very unique in that you have a lot of military travel and traffic coming through here.
Right.
There's a lot of government activity that happens around DCA. That doesn't happen all over the country, but there are unique circumstances that exist at different airports. And so what we're doing is, again, using that AI tool. I just asked the question yesterday, what have we learned? They said they're still inputting and analyzing. In the next week, we should have some readouts of, do we have hotspots? Where are they? And what do we do to resolve it? So we don't have the results of all the analysis using AI, but I expect that to come soon.
Sticking with, looking forward, I know there's two big sort of projects DOT has taken on to combat some Democrat-run cities and states, specifically in New York and in California. What can you tell us about, one, the administration's dissolution of the congestion pricing in New York and the battle they're facing with the subway? And then part two, I'll let you answer. What's going on with this high-speed rail investigation into California? Are we expecting to uncover some fraud? Are you working with DOGE? Like, what's going on in that regard?
Is this like one question with 6 parts?
Hey, take it however you want. Take it however you want.
So let's talk about congestion pricing in New York. By the way, the administration is not opposed to congestion pricing. But what they did something very unique. They took rules that were set up for roadways, right? So think about it. I have 4 lanes, and one of them is going to be, a lane that you can pay more money based on congestion to go faster through traffic, right? They took that model and applied it to a cordoned area in New York City, 60th Street and South. And the problem with that is those roads have been already paid for. The taxpayer, through their income taxes and through their gas taxes, have paid to buy those roads. And now that taxpayer, to use those roads, has to pay a second time, $9 to get in and $9 to get out of roads that they've already paid for. And so the problem is there's no free pathway into this part of New York City. And every other time that this has been done, there's always a free pathway, a free way into using the infrastructure. This is the only time you have to pay to actually use it. And so what this does is it's reduced congestion for sure. But you have rich people who do well can drive into the city because they can afford to pay it. But if you're a middle income, lower income person, you can't afford to drive into the city. So this is absolutely class warfare. And the problem the governor has had when she did this program was, if you were truly looking at reducing congestion in the city, you would have done a test that said, okay, how much money do I have to charge? And how much money do I charge to reduce congestion by this much? I'm gonna do analysis on dollars charged per reduction of traffic. That analysis was never done. What she wanted to do was charge an amount of money so she could raise additional revenue for the transit system in New York. So this is just another tax wrapped in congestion relief. And it hurts the poorest New Yorkers and those in the surrounding states the most. And that's an affront to fairness, and I don't like it.
Before we do talk about that California rail investigation, because I'm very interested to hear what you guys have unearthed there in the early stages, counterpoint to what you just said in New York, are you guys actively giving Governor Hochul or New York officials these alternative options about how congestion pricing could be done well? Are they receptive to those ideas, or is this more or less a light switch on, light switch off debate at the moment?
Well, we've revoked their authority. We've given them another, they probably have 3 weeks now to comply. Again, if the governor was interested in saying, well, how could we come into compliance? What could we do to help the middle income folks or the low income folks access this area? We're open to that conversation. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard from the governor. I don't know where she's at. But again, let's take a step back again. And I think this is instructive. If you don't live in this area, you should care, because these are models that are taken not just only in New York. They'll try to bring them out to the rest of the country. And the problem is they want to take people off of the roads from driving cars to taking public transportation. Mm-hmm. You can do that. That's fine, Governor. The problem is that you're trying to put people on trains, a transit system that is dirty, it's full of homeless, It's crime-ridden. People are stabbed, burned, thrown in front of trains. They don't feel safe riding your transit system. So if you want people to ride trains, you shouldn't have to force them by taxing people because they drive cars. You should make the transit system beautiful. Make it safe. Make it efficient. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to coerce them. They would take it themselves. But it is a disgusting, dirty transit system that they won't fix. And they want to take people out of their car and make them ride in that system. By the way, I know a lot of people who ride the transit system who during the day they feel safe, but in the morning or at night, they fear for their lives because of the number of people in that space who commit crimes and do bad things.
On California, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert, this high-speed rail project was supposed to have been completed in 2020. It's obviously half a decade later. There's still billions of dollars on the line. Can you say whether or not the money should stay allocated to this project? And if not, where would you like to see it spent instead?
So I'm not going to front run the investigation that we're doing. So
You're a pro.
That
You're
still
a pro.
hasn't been done. I appreciate that. Actually, I've stayed out of it. I haven't asked for even for an update, so I don't know where it's at. But when the project was supposed to be $33 billion, and $16 billion has been spent. $16 billion was spent on high-speed rail in California, and there's not one high-speed track that's been laid. Not one. And $16 billion was spent. It does beg the question, where did you spend the money? Did someone get rich? Did someone make a lot of money off taxpayer cash on the idea of a high-speed rail? When you haven't built one track, that is a ton of money. And the time frame has been extensive. And so now the estimates are that this is going to cost upwards of $130 billion. California doesn't have the money. I can't imagine the DOT is going to send them additional cash. They don't even have a time frame in when this could be completed. And it goes back to this point. I think high-speed rail is great. I wish we had more high-speed rail. But if you're going to have a project where you want to have, this is a model you could use in the rest of the country. LA to San Francisco, high-speed rail. You want to do it efficiently with the tax dollar, and you want to have the build out be timely. They've done the exact opposite. They've wasted billions of dollars. The time frame is well overdue. And so you get people that say, I don't want to invest in high-speed rail because look what happened in California. It's a waste of money. I want to invest in good projects. And so the liberal mindset who wants high-speed rail, you would think they would want to do it really, really well. And they do it like shit. And the question is, why? I don't know. I can't. You should try to sell people on your ideas, not make them go, these are black holes where people get rich and projects don't get built.
Speaking of projects not getting built, the Biden administration obviously ushered through that bipartisan infrastructure law, had Republican votes. There's a lot of money still allocated to projects in Republican-led states, but the money hasn't gone out the door. Can you give us any update on the status of those funds?
So here's what's happened. Lot of chirping at the DOT. So what happens is a project is announced. This road in Alabama is going to get funded, right? You're going to get grant money in Alabama. Well, just because it's announced doesn't mean the road in Alabama gets the money. You have to draft a grant agreement between the DOT and the state of Alabama. And that takes time, it takes work, the parameters of the grant money that's going to go to Alabama, right? So it's easy to do a press release saying Alabama gets a road. It's hard to do the work of actually getting the grant agreement that'll allow them to turn dirt and start building a road. And so all of the money where we have grant agreements or it's obligated, all of that money goes out. There's been no stop, no pause. All of the legally obligated money is being sent to the states and those projects are going. But what happened is the last administration had about 1,000% increase in announcements between Election Day and Inauguration Day. Massive 974 projects were announced just in election to inauguration. But total, there's 3,200 projects where there's been announcements for a road or a bridge or an airport that don't have grant agreements. So I don't know what they were doing here. I don't know. Again, it's fun to announce someone's going to get money, but the real work is getting the grant agreement done so the project can start. And so we have a backlog of work that we're going through right now to make sure that we can start turning dirt, building roads, building bridges. And so people are concerned that we haven't sent our money fast enough. We've been here for 2 months. Some of this money, some of these announcements go back to 2022. What the hell were they doing for a project that was announced and it's 3 years old? They never had a grant agreement on it. So it does beg the question, did anybody show up here? Was anybody doing their work from here? Where was Pete Buttigieg? Was he in Michigan? Was he here? Was he doing politics? Or was he actually being a secretary that drives projects out of this department that helps build out American infrastructure? And I think the answer to that, based on what I'm seeing, is I don't know where he was, but he didn't appear to be here.
On that backlog, I think you have obviously accurately addressed the main speed bump here in terms of getting the money out the door.
That was a well-played speed bump.
Unintentional. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. The Trump administration's general thrust in terms of shrinking the federal bureaucracy, lowering payrolls, et cetera, how does that jive with this massive amount of work you guys are trying to do, which the last administration, like you just said, couldn't get it done in 4 years? How are you supposed to do that with a significantly reduced team?
Well, I don't think it was time. I think it was, what kind of effort did you put into it? How many hours are people working to get these projects done? And so in this department, again, number one is safety, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I look at, if you think about DOGE, right? They want government, and I want with them, government to be more efficient. And so when we look at that, we have walled off all of our critical safety positions from having any kind of cuts, right? Whether you're airplane inspector, you're a pipeline inspector, you're air traffic controller, those positions we're actually trying to hire into, especially air traffic controllers. But the second part is President Trump's a builder, and he wants to build American infrastructure. And so I'm going to make sure I keep a team that can execute on the grant agreements to get the big, beautiful roads and bridges built across this country that connect people and move products. That infrastructure matters, and so we can be more efficient. But just because Pete Buttigieg hired, another 5% in total workforce at DOT, the output didn't increase with another 5% of workforce. It actually looks like it went down.
During the president's first administration, he tried on many occasions to have quote unquote infrastructure week, have this big transformative announcement that obviously didn't come to pass. Have you spoken with the president about any of these massive nationwide projects, or is that kind of low on his list of to-do items at the moment?
Well, I think the department and the department doing the work of infrastructure matters to the president. Mm-hmm. Specific projects he hasn't brought up to me. He has brought up air traffic control and fixing the system, making it state of the art. And he talked about that long before I got the job. He's cared about the airspace and how old and antiquated it was. I think with the money that came in the last administration, there's enough resources here to continue with a massive build out of infrastructure. It's just, let's use it well. Let's look at how the money's being spent. How efficient is it being spent? What's the timeline around how it's being spent? What can we do about NEPA and other regulations that slow projects down? And also we have to look, if you see 30 or 40% of projects that are going to consultants, as opposed to turning dirt, that's a huge problem. And so we're looking across the spectrum on how we can build more with the same pot of money, as opposed to just spending money and saying money is success. Spending money is success. No, completing projects, that's success as we view the department.
Going back to DOGE for a second, it sounds like to me, and again, I'm not in this room, yourself, some of the other members of the cabinet might have a little bit of beef with Elon Musk right now. Can you characterize that relationship? Or?
No, I don't have a beef with Elon. So I think, take a step back. We're $36 trillion in debt. Mm-hmm. It's a problem. And so the president, he sees this as a long-term issue for growth and prosperity in the country, as do I. And we have to get our hands around it. And so this is the first time a president has said, we are going to have really smart people help us think through how we make government more efficient. And that road can be bumpy when it starts. and our road was bumpy with Elon coming in and DOGE and where can we find these efficiencies? But I would say over the last 3 weeks, we've gotten into a way better rhythm where the work and insight that DOGE is helping us with has been very useful, very helpful, and you'd expect that with any organization, right? You're marrying up these two organizations, and you're going to have some problems when it starts. But what I've seen is it has smoothed out, and we get really good insight and assistance and ideas from DOGE that can make us or help us make this department more efficient, and again, use the tax dollar more effectively.
What are some of those ideas that they've given you for improving efficiency so far?
So I'll even just say we brought in some people to the FAA to look at how can we restructure air traffic control, right? So some might say, well, Elon has SpaceX and Starlink, and has he seen how the FAA works? Because he contracts with.
Sure.
The answer is no. We've had him come in and look at it, go, how does the system of air traffic control itself work, and what upgrades need to be done? If you want to rebuild the whole system, make it brand new, how would you do it? So it's that kind of insight that they've helped, people that launch a Tesla into space or catch rockets with chopsticks. Pretty good to help us think through how can we do this brand new system, all the while keeping the old one running and airplanes in the air. They've been helpful there. Contracting here, we have a lot of contracts that I don't think provide a lot of benefit to the department. We spend a lot of money, but they're helping us look at the contracts that we have and how useful they are on the productivity side. And so then that's taken a little more time as we get their assistance looking through the efficiency of how we use the money here. And it's less about the roads and the bridges. It's more about, how do you spend the money on the contract side and for the services that you get.
We're running out of time, but I do have a couple of questions. One on the topic du jour this week. Did you have any FOMO when you found out you didn't get invited to that Signal Houthi missile strike group chat?
Transportation did not have a role in that conversation, but I watched it as any American would, seeing that unfold, and it'll be interesting to see, what actually happened there. Yeah.
But seriously, though, obviously you were in Congress. I'm sure yourself, your staffers have used Signal before. I know it's approved for use by government officials, but what do you think this whole narrative has taught the country and perhaps, the top Trump administration officials in particular?
Well, I think you have to be incredibly cautious with whoever you communicate with. And again, I don't know how this reporter got on the chain. And again, I haven't had conversations with anyone who was involved, so I can't speak intelligently because I don't have any information there. But again, I do think it's important that we make sure we're talking to the people that are supposed to get the information, as opposed to inviting people in or noticing that people are in that shouldn't be there. And I think that's the lesson. But it's interesting how it's hard to get everyone on a group phone call. Sometimes the email chains can be clunky. So it should be a conversation. How do you actually get a group of people who need to be in the know and having a conversation? What is the appropriate forum for which you do that? And how do you make sure that it's only those people that are in the conversation? And I think that'll be a conversation and a thought process that happens, after this Signal issue. That'll be, I think, positive for everybody.
Sort of a change of topics, but still related to technology. I understand one of your big pushes here is innovation, specifically, rolling in automated technologies to benefit Americans across a variety of industries. But are you concerned that driverless cars, drones doing deliveries, that will kill jobs for American workers?
So first of all, I think if you look at the ability to innovate in the Department of Transportation, some people might not see us as the sexiest or most innovative space. It actually is remarkable what falls under the umbrella of DOT. And you mentioned drone technology, these eVTOLs or Ubers in the air, and autonomous vehicles. No, I don't. I think we have. If we don't allow our innovators to innovate and to test and grow this new technology, someone else is going to do it. It's like, again, should we not have invested in and allowed for innovation around the iPhone, right? You want that innovation to happen here. You can't stop what's coming, and so let's make sure that next generation of transportation, whether it's again autonomous or whether it's in an eVTOL or it's a drone technology, that happens here, and the testing happens here, and then the jobs that are created around that industry are American jobs, and again, I think that is the way to do it. If we don't, you've to look to China. And if China actually develops this technology and we import it here, and you have cameras and sensors on these drones or autonomous vehicles, that is a huge problem. That is a national security risk. So I see this as imperative to make sure that the innovation and the technology that the world is going to use happens right here. And I think what's key is safety, right? So we got to make sure we're giving authority to innovate in the rules that we create, all the while making sure that safety is never compromised. And that's the balance that we're working right now.
Got one more question for you. It's going to be really, really difficult. I understand you're a champion log roller. What was the last time you got up there?
So I log roll, tree climb, chop saw, all the skills of the old time lumberjack, which is again, this is Americana to the nth degree. And so I was climbing trees, I think 3 years ago. So it's been a little while, but my kids log rolling is safer. Tree climbing is a little more dangerous. Sometimes in your 50s, you think you're still 28 and you're not. So it doesn't go quite as well these days as it used to. But again, the Lumberjack World Championships, Hayward, Wisconsin, last full weekend in July. Check it out. It's great. Your family will love it. And so you can go to a rodeo, but lumberjack sports, if you haven't seen it, is very cool. So.
I've only caught it on television. Maybe I'll be going to Wisconsin this summer.
ESPN 6 at 4 o'clock in the morning.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our viewers at home. You can check out more of the great reporting at washingtonexaminer.com. I'm Christian Daytalk, and we'll see you next time.